having worked with Henry and Jack before on various projects, what was it about The Tourist that first piqued your interest?
Harry and Jack, yeah. I mean, the script. I mean, they mentioned it because they've been working on it for a while before I read the script, and then and it sounded quite cool, and when they talked about it, but then they sent the script, and I think it was just it's a really good, it's a good read. I don't know. I hope they will ever release it as a book or something at some point, because it's actually just a really good read. Sometimes I find scripts, or maybe I just think too much about the music and stuff, but this was just kind of it was good to read, and then we get on quite well, and we do things in a playful way, and I had a chat with Chris Sweeney, the lead director, as well, and and I think we sort of connected quite well.
So obviously, I guess maybe musically, what were the first conversations you had between you all with regards to the project?
So I then first actually had a chat with Chris Sweeney, the director, when he was during his long quarantine in Australia, and so strangely enough, we both had a kind of similar instinct, which was a kind of almost religious sort of godlike thing that isn't really mentioned in the script. And apart from maybe, there is sort of this idea maybe of redemption or something, when you lose your memory, it does this erase the potential crimes of the past as well, and things like that. So and this is briefly mentioned by the pastor in, I think, in episode 2, but actually it's sort of like an underlying subliminal theme. And so I one of my first ideas was actually almost sort of doing this hymn-like themes, and of which there is a little bit in there, but it's also a kind of underlying inspiration. So that was one of the sort of first things. And then, of course, the general thing is this sort of balance between the comedy and the tension and the darkness and the lightness. So in the end, I think this wasn't really quite planned from the beginning, but looking at the score now, I almost see it as a sort of, there's always a sort of dark side and a brighter side. It's almost a kind of yin and yang that kind of balances out all the time.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, having watched a number of the episodes, you get this impression that it's quite a sort of, narratively speaking, it's quite a mishmash of different genres. And obviously, I guess maybe there were inherent challenges for you as a composer in sort of maybe trying to address those. How did you go about obviously striking that balance?
Well, I think it's quite fun to have this. Well, I'm not sure. Well, yeah, I guess you could call it a mishmash, but also it's sort of referencing. Yeah, it's referencing a few different styles or movies and stuff, and I think that's quite enjoyable, because it's almost a kind of blank slate thing, because you're in the middle of the outback, you're in the middle of the desert, and there's only a small handful of characters, so I think it can take a few, to pull in a few different directions, and it's quite fun. Obviously there is a sort of slight spaghetti western influence, and then there is a sort of more art house thing in there as well. So, and then the sort of religious thing I talked about, and then there's a sort of a odd thriller element and a sort of Coen brothers type humor in there as well, So and so we didn't really. I think it would have been boring with the music to sort of just ignore all that, I think.
Yeah, sure.
And to unify it too much, and we deliberately, like when the title title card comes up the first time, it deliberately goes into something, quite chirpy and really what you don't expect at all after this kind of crazy truck chase, 6-minute action sequence, and then it goes into these kind of mandolins and the male choir and stuff. And then I think it kind of perks people up and they go like, what is this going to be? So where is this going to go? And I think it makes it interesting.
Because there were elements, obviously, in the first 5 minutes, it felt very much like Steven Spielberg's Duel with the truck. And also I got elements of Hunt for the Wilder People, the Taika Waititi. So in terms of like the sort of balance of humor, what I was going to say, harking back to the writers, obviously, from your point of view as a composer, do you feel that there was a benefit having a creative shorthand, having collaborated prior?
Yes. Well, I think more in terms of, that we're allowed to play a little bit and because it's sort of through the enjoyment and a certain lightheartedness in the working process that you then actually maybe come up with some interesting ideas and some more unexpected solutions, really, because rather than this sort of top-down, authoritative sort of way of that, where like some productions are like that, So I think it's I think it's more in the process. I mean, obviously, the stuff we've done before, in a way, we want to do something, or I want to do something different again, So in a way, I think that didn't really count, and I think they as well, So in a way, I think these are the moments when we sort of forget about the past, And
so in terms of like specific character themes or location themes, do you feel it was more of an organic process this time around? Whereas you say you were, rather than having strict parameters as to what needed to go where, as it were, it was much more of a sort of like you felt it as you went along almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I like on other productions I do these days is I do a lot of write the themes almost in advance actually, just with a script, without them, and this time I started without them having even shot anything, and so and then also this, Chris Sweeney actually had some time to, because he wasn't shooting yet, to listen to the stuff and go like, oh, that's cool, and blah blah, and and then we could sort of start to put it together, which then means, of course, that they also have already some music in the cut straight away from the beginning when they're, because they start cutting while it's being shot. So
yeah, sure.
So then you can already, start to bring in some of these themes right from the beginning. So it sort of becomes, and I think it allows you to be a bit bolder at times, because maybe I sort of wrote a theme and I imagine, this is for this kind of complex of within the story, and then the editor goes like, well, I don't know, let's try and put it somewhere completely different, and I go like, well, yeah, but it wasn't meant for that, and go like, oh no, that's really cool, so, and then we suddenly, and I think, it allows you to be a little bit playful. And it's actually the first time I worked this way was with Jack and Harry on The Missing Series 1, and it wasn't really intentional but it was, I mean, I think they, at the time, Tom Shanklin was the lead director, and he asked me, can you do The Missing? And I said, no, I can't, because I'm committed to, I think it was like a second or third series of Ripper Street that I did then. And I said, no, I mean, I can't. And then we thought about, well, if I start really early and actually write the themes before they even shot it, we can do it. So that's sort of by accident, it came out this way. And then we thought like, oh, this works out really well, and it's actually, I think musically it's a sort of truer way of working with a story, because you sort of work with a script, and rather than sort of sitting in front of a picture and kind of interpreting what you see on the screen, or kind of doing a sort of underscore to what is on the screen. It's more of a matter of actually creating the story with music as well.
Yeah. I was going to say that it does feel, should we say, there's much more in terms of atmospherics, and rather than conventionally underpinning through action and so on and so forth. Even that being said, do you think there was a degree of it brought something new to it in terms of maybe focusing the emotion through the atmospherics rather than traditionally underpinning the character moments as you would normally do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the score starts quite atmospheric, because and it's sort of does the journey of the main character, because the main character finds himself in the middle of the desert and doesn't know who he is, where he is, blah blah, and what's happened. So there is this kind of haze of kind of musical ideas as well, and it's sort of actually happened that way because I started to write these quite clear themes initially before the shoot, and then when we started to how can we use them against the picture, and I found they then start to sound quite clear by the time we are in about episode 5. Then they're played quite clearly and quite big, but it's almost like but then this is also the time when the character starts to find out what actually happened, so it's almost this sort of clarification process happens with the music and with the character as well. So it's a sort of yeah, I mean, there is this different kinds of atmospherics, so, and I think sometimes it's not easy finding the right tone in the atmospherics,
Absolutely. I was going to say, obviously you've been in the industry coming up 30 years now. So from your perspective, which may have changed, I assume it's changed over the years. What is it that maybe it draws you to a project now that maybe when you were starting out was slightly different? So what are sort of your key demographics when it comes to joining anything?
God, are you saying 30 years I've been in the industry? I suddenly feel really old. I wonder if that's even true, actually. I feel I'm only just starting, actually, so it's kind of strange to hear that. Well, one big thing is, because I come more from a sort of cinema background, I guess, more art house films, and that's I only really go to the cinema. I don't even watch that much TV now. I'm more interested in film, Baba. So at the time, it wasn't really the plan to become a composer for TV. But I think the big change is that TV, or if we call this TV or streaming or whatever, is it has transformed, hasn't it? I mean, it's so different, So a series, 20 years ago was like one episode a week of a sort of crime case, and then the next week you solve another case, and blah blah. And now you have these kind of massive storylines that stretch over 8 episodes and are kind of shot beautifully and all that. So I think that's I think that I didn't quite expect. Of course, no. you wouldn't know at the time.
I don't think anybody expected it, to be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, as I said, I completely agree with you. So the form has changed. It's broadened. It's become richer. There's more money in it, and people are investing more creatively into it as well. So I think it stands alone very much on its own merit.
And you see, and also it's a little bit more satisfying to do music for this, because at that time when you did something for TV, it just, people had bad TV, it sounded shit, it was the mixing wasn't as good, you didn't have surround sound for TV, or maybe you didn't even have stereo for TV and all this. And so I thought it was just really unsatisfactory. You record all this great stuff and then it just sort of vanishes into noise and squawkiness and stuff, so
I guess yeah.
And now it's quite different. People have good, good TVs and sound systems, and the mixing has become really good. And we've got these kind of loudness standards that avoid loudness war, which made things sound bad because everything started to get compressed, and so it sort of sounds now quite good on TV. So I think that's also, and it makes it more satisfying. When you make music as well, because otherwise it's just kind of frustrating.
Absolutely. I have two more questions, really simple ones, and I'll leave you in peace, I promise. First one would be, if you had to walk away from composition, from music tomorrow, boom, walk away from it, what other profession would you want to do and why?
Well, so would I still be allowed to be in the industry, or do I have to do something completely different?
I guess we could stretch it to say you're still in the industry, but you can't compose. How about that?
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Well, I would direct, I think. I did some of that, and I have projects on the go for that as well. They're kind of music driven things, or produce, I don't know, I just find creating stories, I like that. So
perfect. And one last one, which I ask everybody I talk to, can you describe for me your perfect Sunday afternoon?
Sunday afternoon, well, I like going,
perfect Sunday.
I like kind of mountaineering, going to the Alps, so Sunday afternoon, a sort of picnic after having climbed the mountain or something, looking onto the landscape. That sounds good to me.
That's perfect, and it's not work related, and you can switch off and you can just go wherever you want to. Dominik, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and the show is really, really interesting stuff, genuinely interesting, and I look forward to doing the review on it.
Exciting.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Martin.
Take care now.
Have a good evening. All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay.